portion of the proceeds will benefit Guam Cancer Care. Tickets are now available at www.projectinspire.co. And follow us on the gram at Project Inspire for updates on the event.
Made to move.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Another deadly shooting. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News. A shooting at a park in San Pedro, California Sunday afternoon killed 2 people with 5 others injured.
We don't know exactly how many shooters we have at this point. We have it contained.
Los Angeles Police Department Captain Kelly Muniz. Officials say that a fight escalated into shots being fired and that around 500 people were in the area for a car show. The second quarter GDP report, which could indicate whether the U.S. has entered a recession, is being released Thursday. Fox's Jackie Heinrich is at the White House with more.
The White House appears to be bracing for a second consecutive quarter of negative growth, commonly referred to as a recession. The White House already saying, though, they won't be using the R word themselves. The Council of Economic Advisors redefining what a recession is, writing on their blog that official determinations take a holistic look at the data.
Despite Russia agreeing to allow Ukraine to export grain out of 3 Ukrainian Black Sea ports, Russian missiles hitting the port city of Odessa over the weekend. Ukrainian Defense Minister Advisor Yuri Sak calling for nations to designate Russia as a terrorist state.
They're striking innocent civilian residential houses, they're striking peaceful cities, and the cynical strike at Odessa airport less than 24 hours after the grain deal was signed is another proof that Russia indeed is a terrorist state.
Russia claims the missile strike hit only military targets. Firefighters in California still attempting to control the Oak Fire near Yosemite National Park. The wildfire causing over 3,000 people in Mariposa County to evacuate. American Red Cross Central Valley Chapter Executive Director Lori Wilson discusses how her organization is helping evacuees.
A lot of uncertainty, you have a lot of fear, and so what we try to do is provide that safe space.
America is listening to Fox News.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Hafaday, Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has the management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
The man accused of attacking New York GOP gubernatorial candidate Lee Zeldin during a campaign appearance is now facing federal charges. David Jacobonis was initially arrested and quickly released on local charges. Fox's Ashley Strohmeyer has more.
His freedom was pretty short-lived. It was after he was arrested again, this time facing a federal charge, as you said, Lawrence, for attacking a congressman. That charge following an investigation by several agencies, including the FBI and U.S. Capitol Police. And it found that 43-year-old David Jacobonis willfully assaulted Zeldin with a dangerous weapon. Now, he claims he didn't know why he attacked Zeldin or even who he was when he attacked him. According to a criminal complaint, Jacobonis said he did not know who the speaker was or that the speaker was a political person. When shown a video of the incident, Jacobonis stated in sum and substance that what was depicted in the video was disgusting and that he must have, quote, checked out.
Federal authorities still discovering millions and millions of illegal opioid pills.
This is probably the most dangerous time to be a teenager in the history of America. Dr. Charles Preston is the coroner in St. Tammany Parish, Louisiana. He says teenagers are buying pills without any idea what's really in them.
Early on, we were really seeing fentanyl mixed in with heroin, and now we're seeing fentanyl being pressed into pills.
The public health group Partnership for Safe Medicines tracks fake pill deaths nationwide. Executive Director Shabir Safdar says more dealers are selling their supply on social media. PSM has recorded fake pill deaths linked to social media in at least 22 states.
Fox News multimedia reporter Rebecca Castor. The U.S. winning gold medals in both 4x4 relay races in the final night of the 2022 World Athletics Championships. I'm Laura Cantor, and this is Fox News.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
We're already Pica's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better.
Announcing the point on Alexa.
In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free press. The right to cough.
I know that reciting to a kind of gets you all choked up.
Right. Yeah, let me start that over again. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, even when you kind of got a frog in your throat and you get a little choked up. Yeah. Well, as is my usual custom, I got something I want to read into the record here as part of the Second Amendment observance. This is a letter to Director Christopher Wray, Federal Bureau of Investigation, 935 Pennsylvania Avenue, Northwest, Washington, D.C. Dear Director Wray, it has come to my attention that the Federal Bureau of Investigation has informed several Missouri County sheriffs that they will be showing up in August to, quote, audit CCW permit holders, concealed carry weapons permit holders. The FBI states, quote, the audit includes an on-site review of your concealed carry weapons permits. Let me be perfectly clear. Allowing federal agents from the FBI to have access to records of Missourians would have a permit to carry a concealed weapon violates Missouri law and infringes on our Second Amendment rights. These Missouri boys don't take any guff. Missouri law specifically prohibits sharing this confidential list with the federal government. Information retained in the concealed carry permit system under this section shall not be distributed to any federal, state, or private entities. The people's elected representatives passed this law after it became known that the Obama administration wanted to know which Missourians had firearms, supposedly to establish who is entitled to federal benefits. We wanted to leave no doubt that the citizens of Missouri have a constitutional right to bear arms, and the federal government has no business poking around to find out their identities. I was a state senator when this law was passed, and I proudly voted for it. In fact, we deliberately wrote the state law so that only the elected county sheriff had access to the CCW list you're trying to get. Can you imagine what a county sheriff looks like in Missouri? Yeah. Here in the heartland, we elect our county sheriffs who are members of our communities. The same cannot be said for your out-of-touch FBI. You may wonder why there is such a strong suspicion of federal agents here in the show-me state. Simply put, Missourians are hardworking, law-abiding citizens who don't need a national nanny state keeping tabs on us. But more than that, over the last couple of years, we've seen story after story of incompetence and corruption at the highest levels of the FBI. Our trust in your agency is at an all-time low. Here are a few examples of how the Biden administration and liberal, quote, deep staters within the FBI have severely tarnished the reputation of this once well-respected agency. You famously targeted the parents of school children who showed up to express their concerns at school board meetings. Unbelievably, somehow this was done as an alleged violation of the Patriot Act. In addition to targeting parents, your agency has targeted conservatives, most famously the witch hunt against President Trump and his team. James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and others endlessly investigated fake allegations fabricated by the Hillary Clinton campaign and Democrat operatives. Yet while it persecutes conservatives, the FBI turns a blind eye to Democrats. The FBI inexplicably cleared Hillary of wrongdoing and has been sitting on evidence of criminal activity on Hunter Biden's laptop for years. Now the FBI appears to be targeting Missouri gun owners, and we will not stand for it. We believe in the Second Amendment here. So does the Supreme Court, as you may have seen in the recent landmark opinion. In New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, I led dozens of state attorneys general in filing a brief defending our Second Amendment rights, and we prevailed. In light of all these facts, Missourians have concluded that the FBI leadership in D.C. has been weaponized for political gain. You have lost our trust, and you seem to be completely indifferent toward trying to rebuild it. Instead, you announce that you will show up at the office of our elected Missouri sheriffs in open and blatant violation of our state law and seek to find out who in Missouri holds a legal CCW permit. This is not going to happen. I will fight you tooth and nail with all the resources that the people of Missouri have given me as their Attorney General. Very truly yours, Eric S. Schmidt, Attorney General. The Attorney General of Missouri. Well, congratulations, Christopher Wray. You are now on the Schmidt list. Interesting to see what a real Attorney General can do, huh? Yeah. I don't notice any travel plans here. It doesn't say, it's just Eric Schmidt. He doesn't tell us if he's leaving. I wished ours would. Yeah.
That wasn't a class action.
No.
But it was a class action.
It was. All right. We got the usual hard-hitting editorial from the Daily News today. Called Zemi Yakotny. It used to be a really good feature of this show. It used to be a great way to start the show. I would look at the editorials from each of the daily newspapers. I got my blue pencil here. I'd mark them up if they needed it. I would evaluate. I would award the better of the two, the coveted Blue Star Award that looks like this. And announce it. And my understanding is that once I would announce which of the two editorials, once the two newspapers got the Blue Star Award, you could hear the champagne corks popping all the way out on the street. Well, the champagne corks haven't been popping much lately. The Daily News puts things in the news hole on their editorial page that are everything but editorials. The Guam Daily Post quit writing editorials a couple months ago, and I learned something at the beginning of the debates last Wednesday night, a real eye-opener for me. This may explain a lot of what's going on at the Daily News. You remember when I read this this front page, top of the fold story in the Post? And this is the one where they beat up on Michael St. Nicholas. It's okay to beat up on Michael St. Nicholas. And certainly there are good reasons to do it. But dredging it up from nowhere and making up a story, rounding up somebody in D.C. to make this front page story just didn't seem to be it. So at the time, my comment was, it looks like the Post is going into a side hustle. They're not only going to sell newspapers, they're going to sell used hatchets. Remember that? Well, on Wednesday night, it was announced that there would be two moderators. One of them would be our own, the Point's, Choice Broadcasting, the Point's own Mana Silva, who we all know and love. And the other one was Phil Leon Guerrero, who we were told was the executive editor of the Post. And I thought, Phil Leon Guerrero, editor? From cub reporter to editor in a matter of, what, a year or so? So I'm looking at today's Post, and sure enough, right here on the masthead, the Guam Daily Post, published by the Guam Daily Post, LLC. General Manager, Henry J. Titano. Executive Editor, Phil Leon Guerrero. Wow. And I don't know if that explains anything or just causes me to be even more inquisitive as to what in the world is going on at the Post.
Explains a whole lot.
Because you remember, we started out with a Mariana's Variety. Mariana's Variety was published in Saipan, printed in Saipan. It was airlifted down here, delivered down here. Then the Variety set up a Guam office and started putting on a newspaper called the Mariana's Variety Guam edition, and it was a good paper. At one time, they really upped the ante for managing editors. They hired a talk show host to be the managing editor, John Anderson, and they were a good newspaper. They were hitting the ball. They were hard hitting, good editorials, curious reporters, etc. And they just kept improving their game. And the paper was owned by a gentleman named Jonas in Saipan. His son Amir was the publisher, And then Cortec bought the paper from the Onassis and installed Mindy Uggan as the publisher. Mindy was a good investigative reporter at KUAM. She brought real journalistic cred with her to the Post. And they began, it looked like it was a migration from the Daily News to the Post, perhaps drawn by the higher journalistic standards. The Post, the Daily News at one time had its day, but Gannett bought it out and turned it into kind of the Western Pacific edition of suburban Daily News. They did a terrible job. Occasionally a good editorial, but not very often. So people like Heidi and Gaynor and even Lee Weber, the former publisher of the Daily News, who had retired and was writing a weekly column for the Daily News, all migrated to the Post. So the Post had talent, and they had the journalistic spirit. Let's go out and find out what the real news is, and let's print it without fear or favor. And they did a great job. A couple of months ago, they stopped writing editorials. Was it been 3 weeks or so ago? They brought in a new publisher, but they don't call him the publisher. They call him the general manager, Henry Titano. And now I notice that Phil Leon Guerrero is the executive editor instead of Gaynor. So this does not, so right now the leading news is the news. The most important part of the news is the newspaper. So I don't think we're going to see any good, hard-hitting, even-handed editorials in the Post for a while. This is the tripe that the Daily News ran for an editorial today. Our view: pair enforcement with education to get drivers to slow down. So the message here is don't drive, don't speed. Yeah, it's not an editorial by any stretch of the imagination. It's not a news story. It's just a space filler is all it is. So no blue star. In fact, I'll give you a minus blue star for that one.
Well, since this is called Press the Meat, it seems like the editorials are now plant-based. They're called impossible editorials, I guess.
Exactly.
They will not count towards a blue star.
Yeah. So to fill the gap here, where I ought to be reading a real editorial, I did find something on the Washington Examiner, which is a real newspaper. It's interesting, that the most famous newspaper in Washington is the WAPO, the Washington Post. At one time, during the Katharine Graham days, was a real hard-hitting newspaper. The Pentagon Papers, New York Times, that's New York Times. The same with the New York Times. The New York Times used to be the record of America. It was, if you could get a job as a reporter at the New York Times, that was the World Series. But they've gone so hard left, they've become so woke that
they're the wrecker of America.
They're the wrecker of America. And I'll never forget the Hunter Biden laptop. The New York Post got it. They ran it. The Times didn't mention it for 5 days. And when they did, the only thing they did was come out and criticize the New York Post's journalism. So the New York Post is really very forgettable. I'm sorry, the Times. But the second string, the so-called second paper, the Post, I read it every day. It's a good paper. It's worth the time. And in the District of Columbia, it's not the WAPO, it's the Washington Examiner if you want to read a real newspaper. So here's an editorial that ran in the Washington Examiner. Don't let post-row hysteria twist the truth. Beginning in 1968, while campaigning to repeal all state abortion laws, a prominent abortionist named Bernard Nathanson fabricated statistics and made up false stories to advance his case. His aim was to frame the abortion debate to make it seem like compassion positively demanded legalization. Nathanson and his team at the National Association for the Repeal of the Abortion Laws, now calls itself NARAL, made up the statistic that there were 1 million illegal abortions in the United States annually. Nathanson knew this was more than 10 times the real figure, but he wanted to make the situation seem dire. He also created from whole cloth a claim you still hear today, that 10,000 women were dying in the U.S. from illegal back alley abortions every year before Roe. Nathanson was well aware that the true figure was 200 to 250. He inflated this terrible statistic by a factor of 40 to 50 to win sympathy. And this is the coat hanger that you see the pro-abortions always prominently displaying. Yeah, this is from Nathanson's lie. Nathanson, who died in 2011, later discussed how as an abortion campaigner, he always downplayed and obscured any scientific evidence pointing to the humanity of the fetus in the womb. We know all about Nathanson's lies and distortions because he confessed them. After a long career as an abortionist, during which he was personally responsible for 75,000 abortions, he experienced a total conversion, rejected abortion, and revealed the truth about what by that time had grown into a $500 million national abortion industry. After the Supreme Court's Dobbs ruling, which at last ended the pretense that there's a constitutional right to abortion, debate over the issue will resume in a way foreclosed since 1973. So it's worth remembering that deception, fabrication, and wild claims are likely to be plentiful from those making the case against abortion limits. It was therefore familiar this week when President Joe Biden repeated an unverified story about a 10-year-old girl supposedly denied an abortion in Ohio where the procedure is banned after 6 weeks of pregnancy. Quote, it was reported that a 10-year-old girl was a rape victim, 10 years old, and she was forced to have to travel out of state to Indiana to seek to terminate the pregnancy and maybe save her life, Biden said. The story had originated a week earlier in the Indianapolis Star, with a local abortionist as its only source. Well, they could have called Washington, and let me see, where is that? Yeah, they could have called Washington, D.C. and gotten a hold of Matt Herman, who is the single source for the Post, probably pretty good at being a single source, right? They could have called him. He probably would have given them a good story. Yeah. The source was Caitlin Bernard, an Indianapolis abortionist who was given responsibility for the Ohio girls' care. She has since been slapped with a privacy violation for trying to turn this little girl's sad story into a political coup. Considering Dr. Bernard's well-known history as a pro-abortion activist, this story should not have been reported without confirmation, especially the way it was reported. Much of the initial reporting still seems to be wrong. Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost has pointed out that his state's abortion law contains exception for the life of the mother and irreversible impairment of a major bodily function, which would have covered such a case as the one Biden reported. So contrary to the original story, this girl was evidently not taken to Indiana because Ohio law banned such a procedure. Abortion takes a human life, and it can also enable violence against women and girls, as the Ohio case suggests. The right to abortion confirmed wrongly in Roe v. Wade nearly 50 years ago created an environment in which rape, including child rape, can be concealed by killing any resulting baby. Women can be pressured by abusive partners, hell-bent on making abortion the only real choice. That's what choice really means. To avoid the responsibilities of parenthood or decades of child support payments. Dobbs has set off a panic because some people are angry that this will not be easily available. When they go to a sympathetic media with false facts and narratives, be skeptical, for sure. Yeah, the lady was more of a publicist than a doctor in that particular case. Okay, let's take a peek and see what we have here on the card. I've got Vince Camacho versus Ken. I've got George Stocku versus Separatists. Moylan versus Levin. We're back to what does a real attorney general do?
Look Missouri up.
We've got, go to Missouri. We've got Deloitte versus Guam, and we've got Turley versus Madam Justice Kagan. And, of course, we start out with Paul Zerzan and systemic racism. I think everybody knows the drill. If you believe in truth and facts, you tell everybody that rice is orange. If you want to go with the narrative and not get canceled, no, the rice is red. So in commemoration of Paul Zerzan, I'm wearing my red shirt today. Let's take a look. Yeah, this is my red shirt. Don't call up and say, Bob, your shirt is red, because you would be reporting the truth and not the narrative. Okay. Once again, we got the Guam Board of Education not understanding how to do its announcement. I'll come back to that right after we take a short break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Project Inspire and the Guam Dance Community presents
Made to Move,
a community dance event. Sunday, July 31st at the Agania Shopping Center. Pull up in your dancing shoes because we're dedicating this entire day to dance. This full-day event will have fun community dance workshops, a grand premiere of the film, and an all-out after-party. A portion of the proceeds will benefit Guam Cancer Care. Tickets are now available at www.projectinspire.co. And follow us on the gram at Project Inspire for updates on the event.
Made to Move.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, here we go again. I took a peek at Facebook posts during the break here, and it reminded me that Liberation Day was a momentous day for me. It was my 4th anniversary as the host of Tall Tales. 4 years ago, thank you, Jose. 4 years ago on July 21, let's see, that would have been 2018, Choice Broadcasting had a float, as it were, a streetcar, one of those streetcars in the Liberation Day Parade. And my first day on the job, I was given a microphone. They had a couple of really nice posters on the side of the streetcar with my picture on it. I was given a microphone, and I walked beside the streetcar chatting with the folks out in the crowd. Hey, you guys, you want to check out a really great radio program? Tall Tales. And it was a lot of fun. It was a great way to start off my gig here on Tall Tales. I'll tell you that 4 years went really, really fast. But what's the old saying? Time flies when you're having fun. So if anybody, if I happen to run into anybody downtown or any place that I happen to frequent, if you want to start chanting 4 more years, 4 more years, I think that'd be great. Okay, enough about me. How do you like my show? Enough. Yeah. Picking back up on the card here, the Education Board still doesn't get it right. In order to have a public meeting, you must post 2 notices in newspapers of general circulation, one a week before and one 2 days before. The notices must contain the agenda of the meeting that you're announcing, and the agenda must be in sufficient detail as to put the reader on notice as to what will be discussed. Here's item 7 on the agenda of the meeting for July 26. 7, new business. Do you know what they're going to be discussing?
Nope.
The only thing you know, it'll be something they haven't discussed before.
It's new and it's business.
Yeah. So they violated the law. The penalty for violating the law is that any action taken during the meeting is void. So they're doing some heavy-duty stuff here, like policy review and strategic planning, U.S. Department of Education specific education report, etc. So every time a board or commission does this, they're taking a real risk. And someone won't like the action that they took. They'll hire a lawyer, and the lawyer will say, I'll see if I can get that action canceled. They'll check the agenda and say, Eureka, I found it. The action is void. Now, I, of course, look at these every day, and the the Education Board, I think, has become what is known as too clever by half. A good phrase to look up, too clever by half. In other words, going a little bit beyond the bounds of cleverness to the point that you've made things more difficult for yourself. And I say that because they always have an executive session. Item 8. And the first item in their executive session is personnel matters. And they cite 5 GCA section 8111A. And the second matter is matters within the scope of the Public Employment Management Relation Act, including collective bargaining, 5 GCA section 811B. So those are legitimate exceptions. Now, you can't just say it's a personnel matter. In order to invoke 811A, it has to deal with not personal. It has to deal with not personnel, but personal matters.
Well, there are better ways to get mentioned on Tall Tales, but if they have to.
Exactly. And anything dealing with collective bargaining, and they have contracts, they have a relationship with the Guam Federation of Teachers. But this is my suspicion. I can't understand how they could do this every time they have a meeting. So my suspicion is we'll do this, we'll publish it this way, and then when we're in executive session, we'll talk about any damn thing we want to, because there's nobody there to hear. Now, you senatorial candidates out there are looking for an issue. I just gave you one. If you don't know how to do it, I'll even help you put it together. If you would rather engage in meaningless speech like, please vote for me because I want to help the people, don't trouble me with that kind of a rep. All right, next on the card, I have Vince Camacho versus Ken. And Ken is circulating, I lost count, is it 21 or 22 citizen initiatives?
I lost count at 2.
Yeah, me too. One at a time is more than enough. If it's going to have any impact, this is a little advice for Ken if you decide to do it again. You need a high-powered rifle with a really good scope sight on it.
Or give them really cool names.
Yeah.
Memorable
You need a really high-powered rifle with a really powerful scope sight. You don't need a shotgun shooting birdshot. And Ken has got 6 initiatives. I can't remember. If it were 1, I could remember it. 2, probably. 3, you're pushing it. It's not the kind of thing that sticks in people's minds. And Jose's got a good point. You need to spend a lot of time coming up with a catchy name for it. Otherwise, people won't remember it. If they don't remember it, they won't pay any attention to it, etc. So there's one of the first of Ken's initiatives I'm paying attention to because it rings my bell. The others, I don't know if I'll even rule on them unless they pass. It's just too laborious. But Ken has an initiative that would create a part-time legislature. That would be a good single initiative, except for this. By putting that out there, Ken has given cover to every politician in the legislature, especially Jim Moylan, because at the very beginning of this legislature, Jim introduced a part-time legislature bill. It was a very well-drafted bill because it was based on Bill 290 from the 28th Guam legislature. I'm going to borrow a page from Tom Fisher's book. I not only championed the bill, I wrote it. Yeah. And what has Jim done since he introduced it? He got a little earned media when he hasn't even written to the governor about it. So you can tell he doesn't care about it at all. He has done nothing to move it. And now, if anyone were to bring it up, the response from all and sundry would be, that's something for the people to decide. Let's put it out to an initiative. That way I don't have to run any risks. Because you know that no incumbent is going to favor a part-time legislature. You get into, what is it? I think perhaps the 12th commandment of Guam politics. Thou shalt not break thy fellow legislator's rice bowl.
This probably would have been a great platform.
I think it'd be a single issue platform. Vote for me. If you want part-time legislature, vote for me, because in effect, voting for me is kind of like the same thing as a referendum for part-time. If you don't want part-time, then don't vote for me.
I know, because we have this debate or discussion on why a referendum when we have a legislature.
Exactly.
You know, and the referendum, the people's choice are our legislatures.
Exactly. So, you know, a senator who really wanted to get elected would pick that up and run with it and say, this is how you do it if you really want a part-time legislature. And if it passes, I'll run for re-election. If it doesn't, I'm not a career politician. I'm not looking for a check. I have a crusade, and that's it. So if you want it, now you know how to get it. But, of course, that's not what we've got right now. You know, I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want to embarrass him, but a guy who's run more than once, never been successful. And, you know, I kind of like his attitude. You know, he's not a go along with the crowd kind of guy. He would add a lot to the mix. And one time I sat him down and talked to him, and I said, you know, you could win, but you needed an issue. And I think the best issue you could run on is part-time legislature, because I think if you did, you could possibly win. And he said, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to run. I'm just going to run. It's an example of someone who would rather run for a full-time legislature and lose than run on a part-time legislature platform and win. It shows you the attitudes that we're up against here.
Because, you know, it's kind of like these candidates are running for careers if they don't have a single issue platform. I don't say they have to have a single issue, but it would make us feel better that they're there for a reason, and not just for their salary or for their career.
Yeah.
Because we're seeing a lot of the same recycled slogans. Change is needed.
Yeah.
Time for a new face. And that's what elections are for. But give us something that we can chomp on.
Yeah. Now, of course, like Jim Moylan, Talina Nelson, and Michael San Nicolas, and let's see. Oh, Tony Atta is the best example. Why are you running for senator? Because I want to be lieutenant governor. But if you want to be lieutenant governor, well, no, you got to start somewhere. So you start as senator, and then you run for lieutenant governor. Right, Jim? Well, no, but it works for Washington rep, too. First, you run for senator, and you use your office to get a lot of earned media by writing letters to the governor. And then after, you got a lot of name ID, then you shoot for a higher office. That's how we play the game here. Yeah. And it's not anybody who, I've got this idea for a really good bill. That's why I'm running. That's not it at all. Okay, let's take a short break, and I'll come back to Vince Camacho versus Ken.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show. Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle. Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits. Morning Mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three. 671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Okay, so here we are with Ken versus, as you were Vince Leon Guerrero, as you were Vince Camacho. Boy, come on, Bob. Vince Camacho versus Ken. Vince Camacho is counsel for the Election Commission. And Ken is trying to get his 6 initiatives on the ballot. It's a labor-intensive process. The legislature has deliberately made it hard because they're afraid of something like I've got in my hand here, the part-time legislature initiative. They can handle just about anything, but not that one, right? So they made it very hard. You've got to have public presentations, and the Election Commission has an active role. They have to write a summary of the initiatives submitted, etc. But Vince Camacho has found something that he wants to do that apparently he's made up himself. It's kind of bootstrapped into it or mission creeped into it, or however you want to phrase it. But you regular tailgaters know that when we talk about legislation and court decisions, I'm always just as concerned with who makes the decision and how the decision was made as opposed to what the decision is. And from time to time, I poke fun at people who make decisions not with their brain housing group, but with their alimentary canal. You remember that, Jose? Yeah. If it warms, if the decision is something that makes your tummy feel warm, great decision. Yeah, but why is the Supreme Court making that decision? Oh, I don't know, but it makes my tummy warm. I like it. Or on the other hand, if you don't like it and it tightens up your anal sphincter, it's a bad decision. You know, I hate that decision. Why do you hate it? Well, it tightens up my anal sphincter. But the Supreme Court decision is well-reasoned. It's in line with stare decisis. There's really nothing to criticize the Supreme Court for. Yeah, but I don't like it. That's it. That's the bottom line. Now, that, unfortunately, is the way a lot of people approach these kinds of situations. And I'm afraid it's the way Vince Camacho approached Ken's initiative. Because if I were to look at the statute, and I always do that. I always cheat by looking at the statute.
How dare you?
Yeah, this is what I find.
How dare you?
This is what I find the commission is to do, other than the ministerial stuff like printing the ballots, etc. At 3 GCA section 16204, the Guam Election Commission shall determine whether initiative measure proposes a substantially similar or substantially related subject of a previously defeated measure prior to circulation of said measure. Because we have a law that says any initiative that goes out, if it doesn't get at least 60% approval, you can't do it again next time. So they got to check and make sure that it's not that. And then 16205, the Election Commission shall submit the initiative to the electors after certification at the next regularly scheduled biennial election, provided, however, that the legislature may call an island-wide special election for the purpose of having the electors vote on an initiative measure. So they've got to submit the initiative to the voters. But the only thing that even resembles any kind of discretion is this a repeat performance? There's nothing in the organic statute of the Election Commission that says the commission shall determine the constitutionality of the initiative or the organicity of the initiative. So
and
this. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, let's clarify. Vince Camacho is the attorney?
He's counsel.
Counsel.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he can advise the commission. They don't have to comply. They don't have to follow his advice. But he's counsel. And obviously, if the commission can't do it, well, you know, the commission is the governing body, not the lawyer. But the way things go nowadays, no commission or board wants to do anything at all without the advice of counsel.
And all you had to do is look up the statute.
Exactly, yeah. So there's no statutory authority to make that provision. So something else here. Asking a lawyer to opine, any lawyer to opine on the organicity, let me back up. Asking a court to opine on the organicity of an initiative at this stage of the game is like suing a senator for introducing a bill you don't like.
Exactly. It hasn't happened.
As long as it's a bill, it's nothing. It's a nullity. It's only after the bill becomes law that you get into things like justiciability, standing, etc., things like that. So it's not a case of putting the cart before the horse.
Unless there are tarot cards next to the mallet.
Exactly. It's not a case of putting the cart before the horse. It's a case of killing the horse by running over him with a cart. Now, something else. In order to opine on the efficacy of any initiative, first of all, the initial question is this: does the initiative address something that the legislature has the power to do? If the answer is yes, then it is the proper subject of an initiative. If the answer is no, then it's not the proper subject of an initiative. An example, the Organic Act says that in order to be a senator, you got to be 25 years old. Could we have an initiative that says, we don't want these young punks running our government. We're changing it so you got to be 30 years old. No, you can't do that. Only those matters that the legislature has the power to do can be the proper subjects of initiatives. And that's the only thing that initiatives do. Now, the initiative statute was not enacted at the same time as the part of our Organic Act dealing with the legislature. The Organic Act created the legislature first and then much, much later added initiatives to the mix. So you have to read the statutes together. A rule of statutory construction is that if you have statutes that deal with the same subject matter, you, wherever possible, you harmonize them. If there are two readings, one that shows a conflict and one shows that the two can be harmonized, you take the second one. You don't go out looking for dragons to slay. Another rule of canon of statutory construction is that if there is a conflict, the ladder in time controls. So if you take all this stuff into consideration, you come to this conclusion. There are two ways that we can enact statutes here on Guam. One way is for a senator to introduce it, to have it passed in a session, a quorum being present, the governor to sign it, veto it, the veto to be overridden. That's way number one. The second way is to have an initiative circulated to the people. If the right number of people vote yes, if it goes and the right number of people vote yes, it then becomes a law in the same manner that a statute passed by the legislature does. Now, this is what the initiative process is all about. I've given you, the Cliff Notes version of the law of initiatives. Okay. Now, I've got the initiative here. Here's the wording of the initiative. This is part-time too. Part-time legislature. The Guam legislature shall be a part-time legislature that meets on the first Monday of January for 60 days and the first Monday of July for 60 days. The governor or speaker may call the legislature into session at any time to consider an act on one piece of legislation. Does the legislature have the ability to do that? Yes, because the Organic Act is silent on that, as we'll see in just a second. Here's what the Organic Act says. Section 48 United States Code 1423, small h. Regular sessions of the legislature shall be held annually, commencing on the second Monday in January, unless the legislature shall by law fix a different date, and shall continue for such term as the legislature may provide. The governor may call special sessions, etc. So if the legislature can do it, then it's the proper subject of an initiative. Now, here's the GEC comment. In other words, the ruling from Mr. Justice Vince Camacho. First, with the voter initiative number 2, you seek to implement a part-time legislature by limiting the term of a regular session of the Guam legislature to 120 days. However, according to 48 U.S.C. 1421, the Organic Act vests the legislature with the discretion to determine the length of each regular session. Thus, if your proposed measure were enacted, it would divest the legislature with this discretion, which would be contrary to the Organic Act. No. For all of the reasons.
Nope.
For all of the reasons that I just mentioned. Okay, we're going to go to the big halftime show. Who was on the line?
That was another Joe. He's going to call back.
Okay, so we're going to go to the big halftime show. Coming back for Hope's screen test, I'm going to wrap up Vince Camacho versus Ken, and we'll get into the rest of the card.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
We are being truthful. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News. As President Biden's COVID symptoms continue to improve, White House COVID-19 response coordinator Dr. Ashish Jha tells Fox News Sunday that the White House has been completely forthcoming regarding the president's condition. There has been some criticism that the White House hasn't shown transparency with reporters.
We have made sure that the American people are kept abreast of what's happening, and I think this has been an incredibly open and transparent process.
President Biden experiencing a sore throat Sunday. As gas prices continue to fall, publisher of the Lundberg survey, Trilby Lundberg, explains how consumer demand is impacted by inflation.
Price response on the part of demand is very, very powerful, but it's not only gasoline prices, it's the price of everything as consumers have to allocate what they can spend on fuel.
Lundberg reports that the average price for a gallon of unleaded gas dropped by 32 cents over the past 2 weeks, but is still $1.32 more than at this time last year. Peck Park in San Pedro, California, the scene of a deadly shooting Sunday. Around 500 people were in the area for a car show.
We did, in fact, have a total of 7 patients that were injured, all adults ranging from 23 years old to 54 years old. Tragically, 2 of those 7 individuals have passed away.
Captain Eric Scott, Los Angeles Fire Department Public Information Officer. No arrests have been made yet. An out-of-control car crashing into beachgoers in Daytona Beach, Florida, Sunday. WOFL Fox Orlando's Jessica Ely was at the scene.
Witnesses say that car was driving extremely fast before it hit the toll booth, went onto the beach, hit several people, and then ended up in the ocean. A child who was in the water at the time of the crash was hit and taken to the hospital.
Authorities say the child is in stable condition. America is listening to Fox News.
Project Inspire and the Guam Dance Community presents
Made to Move,
a community dance event. Sunday, July 31st at the Hagåtña Shopping Center. Pull up in your dancing shoes because we're dedicating this entire day to dance. This full-day event will have fun community dance workshops, a grand premiere of the film, and an all-out after-party. A portion of the proceeds will benefit Guam Cancer Care. Tickets are now available at www.projectinspire.co. And follow us on the gram at Project Inspire for updates on the event.
Made to Move.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
An increasing number of young men trying to cross illegally into the U.S. Fox's Steve Harrigan reports from Eagle Pass, Texas.
Among those detained, a 24-year-old Honduran man, Kevin Palma. He has a lengthy record of arrests for child pornography. He's also been deported from the U.S. 3 separate times. Policy initiated by the governor here, Governor Abbott of Texas, busing some migrants who entered the U.S. illegally to northern cities. Records continue to be set here. As far as crossings go, more than 200,000 encounters in the month of June alone.
Multiple shark sightings outside New York City are not preventing people from hitting the beach. Fox's Alexis McAdams is in Rockaway Beach in New York with the report.
This is the third time just this month that this beach behind me was closed down due to shark sightings. Rockaway Beach was very crowded, back open after the New York City Parks Department temporarily closed it down. No swimmers were allowed into the water after several shark sightings, but people were back out trying to stay cool during this heat wave across New York. Although beachgoers are once again enjoying that water, we spotted several New York State Police helicopters flying back and forth along the shore.
A UFO thriller lands at the top of the weekend box office.
Nope debuts with 44 million in ticket sales.
Yeah, nah.
Critics say Jordan Peele's highest budget production yet is absolutely something that should be seen on the big screen. Nope knocked a Disney and Marvel blockbuster to second place. Thor: Love and Thunder selling just over $22 million worth of tickets. Universal's animated pick Minions: The Rise of Gru lands in third place with $17.7 million in its fourth weekend in theaters.
That's Fox's Kathleen Maloney. I'm Laura Cantor, and this is Fox News.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Joyce Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show. Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle. Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits. Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three. 671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
So there we are after that wonderful halftime show that we're spoiled, you know. We get to listen to that halftime show every day. It's great. Next item on the card is a weekly feature of Tall Tales. I call it Hope Cristobal's Screen Test. A video that someone shot. I don't even know who shot the video. Perhaps attempting to lay a foundation for Hope to go to Hollywood and become a movie star.
It was well-intentioned.
Yeah, I don't think she's really cut out. I'll ask you to weigh in after you see the video here. I don't think she's really cut out to be a romantic lead. Character actress, maybe.
Comedy-tragedy.
You know, Jose, I've probably told you this before, but we go to L.A. For one reason or another almost every year. And about every 3 years or so, we'll go up to Hollywood. and park the car, and I'll just stroll down Hollywood, get dressed up and stroll down Hollywood Boulevard, figuring that if I'm lucky, I'll be discovered. That some talent scout will say, hey, you, come over here. You should be in pictures. And, but somehow it never happens. But I finally figured it out. They're not making film noir anymore. So there probably wouldn't be any demand for me. I think Hope probably fits into the same bracket.
Oh, is making film noir?
Well, I was...
The Guam PDN.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's not in color anymore.
It's not in color. It's film noir, yeah. Okay, so a little background on Hope. I have a copy of perhaps the last journalistic paper on the island, the Guam Island Times, Pacific Island Times, now that the Daily News and the Post seem to have gotten out of the newspaper business. And there's a feature story here about Hope that ran in the Pacific Island Times in May. And it's a story about Hope being nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. The incongruity of that nomination will strike you right between the eyes as you watch the video here. And there's a little biographical information on Hope. Growing up, Cristobal was surrounded by women who had a big influence on her traditional values. I was raised by my mother and her oldest sister. My auntie was like a stay-at-home mom for us, she said. And here's the punchline. Cristobal is proud of being raised with Chamorro values and hopes that the current generation can perpetuate them. So I'll leave it up to you if Hope exemplifies Chamorro values in this video. Now, the event in the video is described in this article, and it talks about Hope, and then it says, as an activist, Cristobal is not afraid of confrontation. At the Black Lives Matter rally in Hagatna last year, there were counter-protesters harassing us. She said, I wasn't afraid. There are always people out there who will challenge you. These are just part of the journey. It can be hard because I'm an educator. I went to the Black Lives Matter rally because I wanted to show my support for oppressed people. I followed the news and I'm aware that innocent people are getting killed just because of their skin color. We need to see each other beyond the color of our skin. Tie a string around your brain for that one. So you're going to see a video of the counter protest. So go ahead, run it, Jose.
You're nothing but a white colonizer. That's who you are. Colonization is the same thing as slow murder. You're a murderer. That's who you are. We need to do different. We need to do better. Get off my island.
Sir, you need to go. You can't be policing people here and telling people how to protest and what to protest for. You need to go. You need to go. I'm against this. Yeah, that's cool, but you cannot be policing people and telling them how to protest and what to advocate for. She has a right to go.
I'm an indigenous Chamorro. I have more rights here than you are. You came here because of the structures of colonialism, asshole. You need to leave.
You need to go.
Please.
You need to get out of here.
Please pause it.
Get out of here.
Please, this is not your
When I get a chance, go.
Please, thank you. Thank you, partner. Please, please. No, you think nothing.
What happened, ma'am?
Well, he confronted me.
What did he
He's
say?
telling me I shouldn't be here. I support Black Lives Matter. It's part of the colonialistic systemic racism. And I came here to support these people. He's a white man that has come here. And he continues the legacy of colonialism. He continues to fight people, individuals, my goodness. I'm a former senator. I authored the Commission on Decolonization. Karahu. Ay, mamalo.
We are proud of you, Auntie.
Si Diyos mangasi.
Yeah, so there's Hope Cristobal. So you just saw, let me read this section of Pacific Island Times again. As an activist, Cristobal is not afraid of confrontation. At the Black Lives Matter and rally in Hagatna last year, there were counter-protesters harassing us. Boy, did you see that?
I kept count in my head.
Yeah, boy, the way the harassment was, yeah. I wasn't afraid. There are always people out there who will challenge you. Cristobal is proud of being raised with Chamorro values. Chamorro values. He's a white man.
Which one was on display?
Yeah, well, he's a white man, you know. She has more rights here than he does. Yeah, Chamorro values. That the current generation can perpetuate.
And then looked how it leached into the speaker. Paul Zerzan, this is not your place. You shouldn't be here. Paul Zerzan, go, and then got the whole crowd riled up.
Yeah.
That's the peacemaker?
Yeah. Nobel Peace Prize. And then, of course, she did come up with this one, too. I went to the Black Lives Matter rally because I wanted to show support for oppressed people. I follow the news, and I'm aware that innocent people are getting killed just because of the color of their skin. We need to see each other beyond the color of our skin. He's a white man who has come here because of systemic racism. What a phony. But the reason I run this every day is not that is not to show you, you know, how disjointed some people can be and you know, the range of human emotions, but I run it because Hope Cristobal is the face and voice of the Chamorro separatist movement. Not all by herself. She's got help from Melvin Wanpat and Robert Underwood and a few others, but she is the chairperson of the Chamorro Language Commission, which means that she's pretty high up there in the Chamorro hierarchy of things. And you can imagine a Guam that is separate from the United States, an independent sovereign country with leadership like Hope Cristobal. Are you ready for that? That's the reason that I read this every Monday. If you have friends that haven't seen it, tip them off every Monday right after the big halftime show. That's when I run it. Okay, next I'm going to go back here and finish up on Vince Camacho versus Ken. Now, Ken is a layman. He's not a lawyer. He's a pretty smart fella. He's a pretty clever fella. He's pretty articulate. He is a crusader. He wants to make things better, and he puts a lot of time into it. But what Vince Camacho here has done, he sent this message out. Any of you folks out there who think that Ken is doing what needs to be done, here's the warning. This is a lawyer's game. This ain't for you. You know, because I think Ken is right on the law. I think Vince is dead wrong on the law. But what does Ken do in order to get around counsel for the Election Commission, who's being paid a retainer to do what he's doing? The members of the commission And of course, I don't think the commission has even taken any action on this. So, in addition to everything else I said, unless the commission at a properly called and noticed meeting said, we're not going to entertain Ken's initiative number 2, then in addition to everything else, Vince is apparently ultra virus. He doesn't have the authority to rule as to what can go out and what can't. But what can Vince do about it? I mean, what can Ken do about it? He can go to the newspaper, which he did, but it's a lawyer's game. He'd have to hire counsel. Counsel would have to go to court for a writ of mandate or an injunction, some kind of extraordinary relief. That's the kind of stuff that requires the payment of big bucks up front in order to do what any citizen ought to be able to do with half his brain tied behind his back. The system should favor the unrepresented person, not throw roadblocks like this in front of him. So here we are with a really good idea and an officious intermeddler who's saying, no, that won't go out for initiative, Ken.
Can I open up another can of worms?
Of course.
Because I love opening up cans of worms.
That's what Tall Tales is for.
We have an election commission made up of commissioners chosen from the Democrat Party and the Republican Party.
Right.
How is the independent determined?
The Democrats and Republicans select him.
So that's not. This is what causes me to also pause and question the commission makeup. If I'm not mistaken, if you go to the register of the voters, there's very few people who register as Democrats, very few people who register as Republican, and the majority are non-committal.
Right.
It would seem to me that the commission should be made up of more non-committal people than people chosen from the parties.
Well,
how is the commission created?
It's created by statute, and here's my analysis. Point number 1, no business would ever design a governing structure the way we did our election commission. People divided smack down the middle on important issues. They're going to run the show, right? And besides that, the commission is not just I introduced a bill on the 28th that passed, but Governor Camacho let it die. He pocket vetoed it at the end of the session. That created a board of canvass and appeals. So the board of canvass and appeals would only handle appeals, counting, and things like that, but they didn't run the election. They didn't get out there. They didn't sit out and watch the votes being counted, et cetera, which is what this does. This is not a policy board. This is an operating board. So my analysis is that the reason that they set it up the way they did was they couldn't figure out any other way to establish governance that would not be criticized as being put in the hands of a partisan politician. That's my analysis. Oh, and in most states, in Wisconsin, for example, the elections are actually run by municipal officials, town clerks, city clerks, et cetera. And there's an election commission that sits in Madison that handles, the policy type issues. They don't count the ballots or anything like that.
And the chair is a partisan person who decides down the line the tiebreaker, it seems, because the independent is not the tiebreaker vote, as reported in the news from the last election.
Well, this election commission does not have a tiebreaker. Every commissioner votes. Now, one more thing in the states, when it comes to the mechanics of how the elections are run, the overall supervision is usually the Secretary of State. So the way my bill was structured, you had the Board of Canvass and Appeals. The Director of Administration was the equivalent of the Secretary of State. We didn't bring in people and pay them $350 a day. It was an additional duty for government employees. So every government employee was subject to work on Election Day, and it was what I called an accordion staff. You don't need to have once you count the votes and do your reports in December, you don't need a whole staff sitting around twiddling its thumbs for 2 more years, and that's what we got now. So there's a lot of work to be done here. We've been pretty lucky, I think, in the person that the commission has selected to be the neutral party.
Yeah, and please don't take my questioning, Maria, because I know her. She's a very stand-up person.
Well, she's the director.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the neutral person is Pat Seville.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, who I suppose brings a degree of civility to the commission. Where's that rim shot, Jose? Yeah, and we've had Fred Jackson, who was pretty good at that job. We've been pretty well, I think, set up with that. Maria Pangilinan is the director. She's head and shoulders above anybody else who ever did that job. She is
the most consistent, that's for sure.
She is, and you know, if you call her up, you can actually talk to her on the phone. Of course, she's not a doctor, you know. Yeah, you can talk to her on the phone. If every public servant, every director in every agency were like Maria Pangilinan, there'd be 1 million people living on this island. Unfortunately, I only know one other besides Maria. Okay, so this whole thing, it's just rotten. It just leaves a horribly bad taste in my mouth. That you've got a lawyer who's doing something that he doesn't have statutory authority, or you know, if the board did act on it, they're ultra-virus. I don't think they did act on it. The whole thing has an extremely chilling effect on the initiative process, which is something that we really need.
Maybe he wants to run for governor because he gave himself veto powers.
That's true. That's very true. So this is a really sad chapter here. Once again, a challenger out there, somebody who's on the outside that wants to get in, here's your issue. Go through that statute and clean it up. Take out all of the onerous provisions and make it a citizens' initiative process. So that you wouldn't have to have a battery of Philadelphia lawyers just to get past in-house counsel. All right, next item on the card is George Stocku versus Separatists. Now, we've had George Stocku on the show before. George Stocku is Tautau Gizetnya, and his real name is Estacchio. But back in the day when he was working for Mr. Wumpet in the Guam legislature, everybody knew him as George Stocku. So he worked for Mr. Wumpet in the Guam legislature. When Wumpet went to Washington, he took George along. I guess George liked it so well back there, he never came back. He's still there. And about once a month, he writes an op-ed for the Daily News. Many of them are, the purpose of which is, of many of them, is the glorification of George Stocku. But this time there's some real substance to what he said, so that's why I put it on the card. I noticed somebody trying to get into the show here. If I can, I'll do that before I move into George Stocku. I'm not seeing anything on my stack. Is it another Joe? No. Is it a call? Yeah, okay, I'll hang on. Let's hang on for just a second here till Jose puts his caller on the show. I really don't like to keep people hanging on too long on the phone. On the other hand, I don't like to break into the middle of a card item either, because he doesn't want to talk anyhow.
No, that was Mr. Weber confirming the date and time.
Oh, good timing. Okay. So we've got George Stocku versus Separatists. And you know, I told him the time is Churchill Downs. What time is Churchill Downs? It's never the same time. It's not a time, it's an event. And if you're a tailgater, you kind of time it that way. All right. Going back here to George Stockew. George Stockew says, and this is George Stockew versus the Separatist letter, self-determination is not self-activation or unilateral. It's a pretty confusing title for an op-ed piece. To know the technique of government without knowing the good end to decolonialism in Guam will serve is disastrous. Now, I think I agree with that, but it's a poorly worded sentence. In other words, not knowing what decolonization could amount to could be disastrous. See all the writing I've done about the insular cases. But to know the good end without having knowledge of the political technique is frustration. Subtitle, Decolonization 101. I read a lot and have heard a lot about Decolonization 101 from the highest elected officials on Guam, University of Guam professors, university students, and others. I, too, have personally experienced its demeaning effect. Now, you got a pronoun here, it's. I don't know what the antecedent of that pronoun is. Is it the University of Guam? Professors? Decolonization? Hard to say. But I'll keep reading. So I'm sympathetic with all the sentiments and goals expressed in various fora, including the media in Guam. I have also witnessed firsthand from the nation's capital the impact of the federal government's paternalistic policies in Guam with only marginal input from the residents who were directly affected by federal fiat. Guam being listed by a committee of the United Nations as a non-self-governing territory means nothing and guarantees nothing. Let me try that again. Guam being listed by a committee on the United Nations as a non-self-governing territory means nothing and guarantees nothing. The panel cannot work its will on Guam, and how many times does Guam need to exercise its right to determine its preferred political status before it can be delisted as a non-self-governing territory? Guam had a plebiscite to determine its preferred status under the watchful eyes of United Nations representatives. I wonder when that was. I missed that one. What I have yet to hear from those advocating statehood or independence for Guam is how and who will deliver the mail from Guam to off-island addresses. I'm going to stop here. You know, the three COFA states, the freely associated states, Marshalls, Palau, and FSM, one of the things they negotiated with the United States is that the United States Postal Service delivers the mail. Can you imagine them trying to set up their own mail system? It would be impossible. And where are you going to go nowadays without mail? Okay. Who will deliver the mail from Guam to off-island addresses should Guam become an independent sovereign nation? And who, pray tell, owns the gold bullion deposit that will be required to back the paper currency printed by a sovereign Guam? Now, of course, the independentistas will tell you, well, we aren't going to have our own currency. We'll use the U.S. dollar. That's what they use in the freely associated states. Panama uses it. A lot of countries use the U.S. dollar. That's fine. But how do you get the U.S. dollar? You have to have something to sell in a U.S. dollar area, or you have to bring people to Guam that carry U.S. dollars. They don't grow on trees. One of the things that the separatists never want to talk about. And then Stockyu goes on to say, and are the residents of Guam ready to trade in their American passport for a newly minted Guahan passport? I'll bet it'll be really attractive. It'll probably have pictures of cultural dancers on the front cover. And what level of protections can Guam residents traveling abroad expect? You know, when you are in a foreign country that has an embassy and consular service, you need to renew your passport, get extra pages in your passport. If you're thrown into the pokey in a foreign country, somebody from the consulate will come and see you and try to make it as easy for you as possible. Stockyu said, these are not counterfeit concerns. Self-determination is not self-activation or unilateral. And to those advocating statehood, I ask, by whose invitation and by what authority will Guam be admitted to the American Union? Will Guam, with a population of 160,000, be allowed to have 2 senators to represent them in the United States Senate? The same number as California with 45 million people? I made this point over and over again. Just not enough people. The military presence in Guam is a mixed bag. The darkest days of Guam were during the imposition of Franklin Roosevelt's 1930 executive order that designated Guam as a restricted naval reservation. I think it was more like 1937. And background here, geopolitics played a role there. And I'll give you the explanation. Guam became U.S. property in 1898. Saipan in the Northern Marianas, Luta, Tinian, and Saipan were not part of the deal with Spain. The United States got Guam as a prize of war in the Treaty of Paris in 1898. The United States didn't want the rest of Micronesia. Probably could have had it, but didn't want it. So Saipan, Luta, and Tinian remained with the Spanish. Well, the Spanish didn't want it anymore either if they didn't have the Philippines. There was no need for the Spanish to hang on to it. Germany had just become a unified country in 1870 and had been left out of the era of discovery and colonialization and was really anxious to build its own colonial empire. So the Germans bought Saipan, Luta, Tinian, and the rest of Micronesia from the Spanish. And they tried to do a lot with it. They wanted to make it a paying proposition. You know how Germans are. But when World War I broke out in 1914, the Japanese declared war on Germany and moved in and took all of Germany's Pacific colonies away from the Germans, 1914. When the war was finally over, the League of Nations, the predecessor to the United Nations, said many of these former colonies will establish as what we call League of Nations mandates, and will give the mandate to Japan. So Japan will have the mandate to run all of the Micronesia islands, but this is not a defense mandate. You could take it over. You could kind of bring the people along. The word tutelage comes into play, but these are not supposed to be fortified. Okay, we're going to do the 7th-inch stretch early today, Jose. 5:37. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, right. Yeah, you're right. 5:37. Let's head for Wrigley Field for the 7th-inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Okay, here we are. Seventh inning stretch in Chicago. 2 more innings to go, and we're wrapping up another tall tale. So the Japanese took the Northern Mariana Islands, and they cheated. They fortified the Northern Mariana Islands. And we knew that the Japanese were fortifying Northern Mariana Islands. So as a means of dealing with that, Roosevelt put that restricted naval reservation rule in place so the Japanese wouldn't be sailing ships close to Guam. That's the reason for it. But it lasted. The naval security clearance was finally lifted by President Kennedy in 1962. Now, the reason that it lasted after the war, when obviously there are no more Japanese in the Northern Marianas, is because in 1947, the United States established the Naval Technical Training Unit on Capitol Hill in Saipan. The Naval Technical Training Unit was a front for a CIA organization that trained Chinese, KMT Chinese from the mainland, for their attempt to invade the mainland and take it back. And since we were doing all that secret stuff, you couldn't, in those days, you couldn't even go to the northern half of Saipan. So in order to protect the secrecy of that outfit, we didn't want people snooping around out here, so we just left the security clearance law in place. It really did. We didn't need it on Guam, but if you had it on Saipan and not in Guam, it wouldn't have worked very well. So in '62, the Naval Technical Training Unit shut down, no need for the security clearance, and it went away. Stockhew points out that when he was coming home from college, he had to have the permission of the Navy to come back to Guam. And that's the way it was before that clearance was lifted. Finishing up on Stockhew's column here. For the most part, our military has been mutually beneficial per partnership in Guam. I am old enough to remember during the Japanese occupation in World War II, the lyrics of the song pleading, "My dear Uncle Sam, will you please come back to Guam?" Now, some of you mature people out there in the audience would remember a gentleman named Pete Seboges, the former commissioner of Barrigada, who used to sing Uncle Sam as he played his ukulele. Quite a guy. Okay, finishing up on the column, the frustration and disappointment over the live fire firing range complex at Lutection should have been directed not at the military bases. It's not the military's fault. The protest should have been directed at the last 2 elected congressional officials who had the ability to intervene and influence the outcome of the project. Now, that would have been Michael San Nicolas and Madeline Berdallo, right? They did not. So that's who you're going to blame. Hey, you guys out there, Protege Texan, get a hold of Madeline and MSN. Stockhew says, I'm not a surrogate for Uncle Sam, but the live fire training range complex could have been sited at a less intrusive and less disruptive location. The Department of Defense in Guam has the wherewithal in the budget if the original plan had been challenged in a timely manner. Wrapping up, quote, self-determination and, quote, decolonization in the context of territorial political aspirations are euphemisms for limiting federal power in Guam. So what he's saying is when people are talking self-determination and decolonization, that's not what they really want. They just want Uncle Sam to back off. That's what he says. And he says, I'm all for it. Well, so am I. And I've been saying that over and over again. So interesting read. A little hard to decipher George Stockhill, but nevertheless an interesting read. I've got another Joe on the line, and then we're going to be heading for Churchill Downs. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Hey, Bob. So my original reason for calling was it seems as though all of the newspapers on Guam are leaning towards the left now. So the cards are kind of stacked against the Republicans this election year.
Absolutely.
So, and even social media uses code words, pronouns and adjectives for wokeism. So, if you aren't in line with, on the same page with the wokeism, the cards seem to be stacked against you again.
You can stack the cards as high as they will go without tipping over, and it's not going to make any difference to me or another Joe. Somebody has got to be standing there saying the rice is orange. I don't care how many times you say it's red, you're wrong. And that's the function of tall tales, right?
Yep. So it's very interesting history. Flashbacks, and but hopefully there's some light at the end of a tunnel with regards to Republicans, conservative-leaning supporters in their point of view, and they get heard. The part-time legislature. It just seems as though no one wants to step on anyone else's toes, and they all have in mind what the priority is for the Republican agenda, the Republican platform. However, Uncle Bob, it just seems as though right now the highest-ranking Republican on island would be the guy running for governor, lieutenant governor. Is that right, or is that wrong?
Well, the titular head is the highest-ranking elected official in your party. So Felix would be sort of the quasi head of the party, but the highest-ranking Republican in office right now is probably Chris Duenas, as far as I can figure it out, right?
So there needs to be a little bit more of the solidarity, earned media, so to speak, with those leaders in the same room, in the same table, addressing some of the platform issues. It would seem. Does that sound right?
Well, you got to remember that as far as the legislature is concerned, it's a zero-sum game. There are only 15 seats. And if there are more than 15 candidates going into the primary, the way you get in is by beating somebody else. So the system is not designed for a whole lot of solidarity. It's kind of like, I was talking about that movie the other day, Nash's Equilibrium. If you saw the movie about a scientist named Nash who was schizophrenic, Nash's Equilibrium. Even when people are rivals and competitors, a degree of competition is still necessary for each of them to be able to do what he needs to do. And that's the way it is with political parties. There's a sort of a Nash's equilibrium. No candidate, even though they're running against one another, goes out and trashes another candidate, but he tries to have a sharper message and perhaps a message that the other candidates don't have so that he can stand out. But nobody has picked up the part-time legislature an issue and run with it, another Joe.
Is there open opposition against it on the Republican side?
Tacit opposition. quiet opposition. Yeah, much people. I want to continue being a senator. You know, yeah. It's not what Republican senators are doing. It's what they're not doing. Jim Moylan has done nothing with his bill. No one has come along and picked it up and tried to move it. So it's not what they're doing. It's what they're not doing. I got to sign off. I got to sign off another show. It's already time for Churchill Downs.
Okay, thanks. Goodbye for your time.
Sure.
Subway's Eat Fresh, Refresh brings you the sequel to the Sweet Onion Chicken Teriyaki. Enjoy the new Sweet Onion Steak Teriyaki. Delight your taste buds with tender, juicy steak marinated in a tangy new Sweet Onion Teriyaki sauce and stacked high on toasted artisan Italian bread, topped with American cheese, green peppers, red onions, and drizzled with a tangy new Sweet Onion Teriyaki sauce. The new Sweet Onion Steak Teriyaki is the height of food craveability. Give in to your cravings at Subway. Eat fresh.
Project Inspire and the Guam Dance Community presents
Made to Move,
a community dance event. Sunday, July 31st at the Agania Shopping Center. Pull up in your dancing shoes because we're dedicating this entire day to dance. This full-day event will have fun community dance workshops, a grand premiere of the film, and an all-out after-party. A portion of the proceeds will benefit Guam Cancer Care. Tickets are now available at www.projectinspire.co. And follow us on the gram at Project Inspire for updates on the event.
Made to Move.
Yeah, so here we are, Churchill Downs. I got about 10 more minutes, and I'll be crossing the finish line here for today. I want to talk a little bit more about independence and about part-time legislature. I've got Moylan versus Levin on the card. I want to do it justice, so I don't want to have to do it piecemeal. As far as independence is concerned, could Guam be an independent country? Yes, legally it could, because Article 4, Section 3 of the United States Constitution, which I read from time to time, says these pages are a little hard to turn. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. So the key phrase there is not territory, but or other property. The territory is property of the United States. And if you followed me on my mock opinion overruling the Insular cases, that's quite clear. That Guam is property of the United States. It is not an integral part of the United States. It's not Hawaii. Hawaii was before Hawaii became a state. So Article 4, Section 3 says that Congress can dispose of the property of the United States, which means sell it to somebody else, set it free to become an independent country. I suppose something I haven't even thought of, and we know that this is correct because in 1946, the Republic on the 4th of July, 1946, the Republic of the Philippines was born. The Philippines had been property of the United States from the Treaty of Paris down to July 4, 1946. During the time that the United States ran the Philippines, we had commissioners. Believe it or not, William Howard Taft at one time was the commissioner of the Philippine Islands. Same guy that was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and the President of the United States. The commissioners was replaced by the Philippine Commonwealth, which started in 1934, which was a quasi-independent state with a three-part government, etc. Very similar to the territory of Guam, but on a larger scale. However, The Philippine Commonwealth did not have the governmental powers and latitude that the territory of Guam has. But part of the statute that created the Philippine Commonwealth, it's called the Tidings-McDuffie Act, said the Philippines will become free in 1946. So in 1946, the United States disposed of some of its property, the Philippines. So the United States can dispose of Guam. There could be a statute passing Congress that says effective July 4th, 2024, the United States withdraws sovereignty from the island of Guam and we'd be on our own. It can be done legally. Practically, I think you'd have a really hard time getting majorities in the House and Senate and a president to sign off on that. As everybody knows, we are now the forward edge of the battle area for the United States, for the defense of the United States. And even if that weren't the situation, I don't think that any country is very anxious to dispose of its property or territory. So practically, I think that the chances of that happening are somewhere between slim and none. But if it did happen, could Guam become independent? Yes. Could it survive? Yes. Would you want to live there? I don't think so. Even if Hope Cristobal were not in charge, I don't think so. I've been to a lot of these really small, independent countries lacking in resources. I don't think you'd really like the quality of life there. Head down to Nauru if you can get there, because Nauru had an airline, but the creditors foreclosed on it. You go down to Nauru and you see what it's like for a small country with no resources. Nauru, of course, did have an abundance of resources at one time. They had phosphate. When seabirds come in and Masinik, Zitakine, through chemical reactions turns into something called phosphate. It doesn't smell. You could pick it up. It can be crunched into a powder. It's not dirty at all, but it's very valuable because it's a really good phosphate. So the Brits colonized Nauru and they mined the phosphate for a long, long time. They finally allowed Nauru to become independent. And Nauru at one time had the highest per capita income in the world. In other words, the gross national product of the island of Nauru divided by the number of people who live there was higher than any other country in the world because of all of the phosphate money. So they did a lot of foolish things. They had an airline. They owned what's now called the Pacific Star. That was the government of Nauru built that hotel. They owned a famous hotel in Melbourne called the Menzies Hotel. And basically they squandered all their money. And now they don't have any money at all. And you go there and it really, really shows. It's a very grim place. If you want to go someplace closer to home, go to any one of the islands in the FSM, Palau, Marshalls. Now, they've got some interest. They're nice places for vacations. You go to Palau, go to the Rock Islands. That's not just nice for this part of the world. It'd be nice anywhere. Ponape is a very interesting place, but to live there, you're going to have to get used to not having an awful lot of the modern 21st century conveniences that you have here, and you're going to have to get used to a whole different kind of government. We have American government here. We're the only place in the world that has American government.
Dare you say it's alien?
Yeah. No, I'm very critical of our American government right now. I think it's heading down the wrong path, but Winston Churchill famously said, democracy is the worst government of all, except for every other kind of government. I think he's got it. So Independence, yeah, Guam could survive, but nothing like what we've got now. You would see an awful lot of things boarded up, go away, falling apart, etc. Take a look at Ceylon. Ceylon, during the British Raj, was a pretty prosperous place. Now they can't even pay. They can't even pay for the oil to run the generators in Ceylon. It's chaotic. It's coming apart. So, independence is not. If Guam were independent, the streets would not be paved with gold. As far as part-time legislature is concerned, a good friend not long ago said, neither you nor your ancestors, et cetera, will ever see a part-time legislature. Now, I have two things to say about that. One is the Overton window, and two, if you think something is good, you want to encourage people who are pursuing it, not try to discourage them. I got to stop here. It's time for a part of the show that I kind of enjoy. That's greeting our president with, "Let's go, Brandon."
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Recession fears loom. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News. With inflation hitting 9.1%, its highest level in 40 years, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen told NBC's Meet the Press Sunday that the economy is not in a recession, even if there's a second consecutive quarter of negative growth.
I don't think that that's a recession. A recession is broad-based weakness in the economy. We're not seeing that now, and I absolutely don't think that's necessary.
GOP Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee says that American consumers are not blind to what's going on in the economy.
What they're trying to do is tell the people in this country not to believe what they're experiencing.
The Commerce Department is expected to release the second quarter GDP assessment Thursday. Following his assault during a campaign event, GOP gubernatorial candidate Representative Lee Zeldin of New York calling for cashless bail law reforms on Fox News Live. The man accused of the assault, 43-year-old David Jacobonis, was initially held for 6 hours before his release under New York's cashless bail laws.
It's a shame that New York's cashless bail law means that this person can attempt to stab anyone, let alone a member of Congress at a campaign event running for governor, and be released within hours.
Jacobonis was later arrested on federal charges due to Zeldin being a federal government official. Firefighters continue to battle California's Oak Fire near Yosemite National Park. Over 3,000 people evacuating Mariposa County. Mariposa resident Boone Jones describes how wildfires have impacted his community.
It's really heartbreaking because it's been year after year. Just to think about the entire state here and everywhere else, there's been so many fires and so many homes and pets.
The cause of the fire is under investigation. America is listening to Fox News.